All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to see you guys here tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm Robin Haynes. I'm one of the new owners of Golden Horseshoe. We're still saying new, even though we're at the end of our third year. It still feels new to us, even though it feels like it's been a lot longer than 3 years. But we're having fun, I think. Okay.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, I had Dan pull this up. I want just to make sure we share this. Our mission at Golden Horseshoe, and this is one of the reasons you see us doing a lot of education, is that we're supporting every rider's journey. We're enhancing the lives of horses, and we're inspiring all who share in the joy of equestrian pursuits. So we do that a lot through just education and supporting everyone on helping their horse live a better life, showing more opportunities or more options for the horse for all different things, for their feed, for showing, for their bits, for tack, all the kind of things. So we're always interested in great educational topics, so never hesitate to send me a note through the Facebook page or the website or however you want to send that off. We look at smoke signals as well. Let me introduce our two panelists tonight. So even though she's my beautiful baby girl, Lilly Haynes, I'm still gonna read. So Lilly is the owner-operator of Prism Equine. So she does horse training, riding lessons. So horse training, she trains the horse as well as the rider, and nutrition consulting. So she has a certificate in equine nutrition from Michigan State University and a equine biosecurity certificate from Ohio State University, and she's finishing her degree in equine administration at William Woods.
Yep.
So thank you for coming, Lilly. We appreciate you. And my beautiful friend, Crystal Tinsley, who is one of the equine nutrition consultants with Bluebonnet, which is just a brand that we trust and love and admire, right, for our horses. We know that they're good. So Crystal has had over 35 years in the equine industry. She's had over 12 years in the human health as well as equine health, which I think gives her just a really well-rounded perspective of this, right?
That's what brought me to
so
it.
We're excited to bring her background. And I know, like, way back in the day, we used to barrel race together, so I'm excited about that. Okay, ready to get started, girls?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, thanks. I didn't realize you put that up there. All right. So the first thing that I want to ask our panelists is, what is the core purpose of equine nutrition? Like, why should we be concerned about that? Lilly, you want to start with that one?
Well, equine nutrition is one of the foundational welfare points for horses. It's one of the 5 freedoms. It is the first of the 5 freedoms, the freedoms from hunger and thirst. So nutrition is the most important part of their life because they wouldn't be here without good nutrition. And if we want to support them as athletes or just as pets and companions, they have to live sustainably and thrive through their feed, just like we need good nutrition to thrive.
So tell me a little bit about the 5 freedoms.
The 5 freedoms. So we've got the freedoms from hunger and thirst, from discomfort, from pain, injury, and disease, and from fear and distress. So those are the freedoms that every animal gets and every animal deserves to be in a good situation.
So as stewards for the animals, this is our responsibility.
Yes, it is.
To make sure they have these freedoms.
Yep.
I love that. Okay. So, Crystal, why is it core to you? Like, you're obviously into the supplements, the feed, etc. Tell us from your perspective.
I think my perspective, especially having been in the equine industry for so long, is why equine nutrition is so important is because it is vast. There's so much to know. There's so much to learn. I've learned very quickly that if you go to social media or Google, it's incredibly overwhelming and you get all sorts of information. So when it comes to nutrition, at the core of what I do on a daily basis is I try to break it down to the very basics, kind of going back to exactly what she talked about. What's the most important thing? Where do we start? And how do we create a good foundation, especially if we're asking these horses to work, perform, produce for us without a foundation in nutrition is a squeaky wheel the whole way.
Right, exactly. I mean, you wouldn't ask an elite athletic, one of our Olympic athletes to perform without good nutrition, yet we ask our equine athletes this regularly, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think, the way God made the horse is supposed to just need hay and water, but that's when they could roam and go find the nutrients they needed, right? We don't let them do that anymore, so we've got to be good stewards. So, okay, so what do you guys see as the common mistakes people make around nutrition? Crystal, let's start with you this time.
I think the most common, there's a couple basic ones that I see right out of the gate, but probably the thing that I hear the most is horses are meant to eat grass. They survived for hundreds of years without feed, without supplements. Why do they need it? And so helping people really understand why we do need it. And back to your point of, years ago, horses had thousands of acres to roam to find the nutrients that they did need. Mm-hmm. Now we have them on dry lots, and we're asking them to perform at levels that they didn't have to in the past. So.
Yeah, they weren't going on 5-mile trail rides or
Right.
jumping a bunch of jumps or, being confined to one area that has certain nutrients in it. Okay, I love that. Lily.
When we really get into how we're feeding and we're feeding concentrates and grains and supplements, it's how we go about feeding. We started a conversation a little bit about this is, I'm just giving my horse a scoop of this or that. Well, what is that really? What kind of scoop are you using? Is it a coffee can? Is it just your hand? What are we using? So feeding by scoop or by flake is just not effective, and it's not tracking correctly what you're actually feeding your horse, especially when we go by the manufacturer's instructions on different feed brands and bags. Everyone's going to be different, and it's going to be different for that weight of horse and their activity level. So if we're just going to feed by scoop and not by weight, so we want to use weight when we go to feed scoop. Wow, words when we feed concentrates, because the volume will be different on different concentrates. If we're going to feed one scoop of a Bluebonnet feed versus one scoop of a non-comparable Stratman feed, the volume's going to be different, and those are vastly different amounts of feed. So feeding by flake and scoop are very different. I'm sure you all have all seen when you go to get a flake of hay that they break off differently. They're different sizes. So there is a weight measurement for each flake of hay, what it should be. Are they usually that? No. But that's the biggest issue I see is we feed by volume and not weight.
Interesting. And I'm sure, Crystal, on the human side, if a human is paying attention to their nutrition for some reason, they're suggested to weigh, not just, right?
Yeah. Any of my clients with human nutrition, it's, we're all different. We're all built different. We all, exercise differently or don't exercise, at all. And where we want to be is based on what we're taking in. And so for our horses, it's exactly the same. We can have a 850-pound horse and a 1,250-pound horse, and feeding the same scoop and the same flakes per day is not going to, equate to the same result.
Totally. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of, if our horse is stabled, especially this is the way that a lot of barns do it. They get 2 flakes, and I thought the coffee can was okay because that's what's used at most. Like you just scoop out the 5 coffee can.
Miss the boat on getting their own scoop.
I know. Okay. How does nutrition fit into the overall you gave it to me, welfare and quality of life for our equine companions? Lily, let's start with you.
Again, like I said, it's one of the 5 freedoms. It's one of the most important things. And Crystal had talked about this a little bit. It's the foundation of their livelihood. Are we going to ask our animal to run barrels or jump or do eventing, dressage? They can't do any of that without the proper energy requirements and without the fuel to make it happen. So if we're especially going to ask a lot of them like that, we need to make sure they have the fuel and the calorie intake to handle it. If they're just going to be pasture pets, it's a little different, but we still do need to make sure they have the correct amount of fuel for all the movement they have throughout the day, because they're always going to move. That's what they're built to do.
Okay, good. Crystal?
I mean, she said it wonderfully.
Okay.
That's kind of going back. I'll be really honest. I don't remember what the exact question was, but everything she just said was a perfect foundation for, I mean, feed management in general. Even if
Right.
you're on a forage-only diet, I mean, you have to get very specific for the needs of each horse.
Okay. What about, what about some of us who are saying, you know what, I don't really use my horse as an equine athlete, though. I do some trail riding. I don't really make them work out that hard. What about that?
Yeah, those horses still just like us. We know, like, especially unfortunately, I've found as I'm getting older, there are things that my body, I have to supplement with. You know, there's changes, and horses are the exact same through every different life stage.
Okay.
They do have vitamin and mineral requirements that are not met just on pasture alone.
Okay, so even if we're not really exercising them much, there's still just general things that, like, you and I might get a vitamin supplement for. The horses need that,
Correct.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And frankly, anytime we ride, that's like just that's not what they do in nature, right? So any sort of riding or that we put them through is an extra thing that might require some extra stuff. Okay, Dan, do you want to pull up the horse digestive? So Crystal gave us this image. So walk us through the digestive system. Just kind of give us the basics of this is what the horse goes through here.
Yeah, and I use this diagram on all seminars that I do, just to kind of give you an idea of what's there. I found a lot of people don't understand. They hear the word gut, and it's a lot. You know, they're like, "What? I don't get it. Which part?" You know, there's a foregut and a hindgut, but digestion begins in the mouth. So that's anytime I'm talking to someone about nutrition, the very first thing that we're going to talk about is dental health, because if that horse does not have the ability to chew and break down their nutrients, the rest of the digestion process is going to be a little bit of a struggle. Also, saliva is going to help. It's going to have enzymes that help break down nutrients as well. So really, I try to keep a really high view of all of it, but how many people have ever dealt with ulcers in their horse? Anybody? I was like, are we going to have a room without them?
I've seen a lot of it. Like we have a
Yeah.
lot. We see a lot of it in the store. So yeah.
They're very common with performance horses and non-performance horses alike. It can be from stress. It can be from even down to forage management. If you've got a horse stabled and you're going anywhere 4 to 6 hours without forage, so horses are continuously producing gastric acid. So you start to say, like, I feed at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and maybe you give flakes of hay in that amount of time. If your horse gobbles that up and you've got 8 hours in between on a daily basis, you're going to get reddening of that stomach lining within the gut. And then next thing you know, you've got ulcers. Our performance horses, just from stress alone, can deal with that as well. That typically happens in the foregut, but as you move back into the hindgut, you can also you can have ulceration there, which is, you can't scope for that, so it's a little bit more difficult to diagnose. But at the same time, in the hindgut plays such a huge role. That is where our fibers are broken down into volatile fatty acids for energy. And if you start having hindgut problems, you have a lot of problems all the way around. So, basically, if you have any hindgut issues, you're going to, on many occasions, you'll find discomfort on the right side where that large colon lays. But you'll start to notice, like, loose stool, maybe a little crabby. And that can happen under stress, too. So if you're hauling your horses a lot, maybe even you bought a new horse and they had a long haul to come to your place, they got new buddies, it can take them up to 6 months to adjust to a new home. Mm-hmm. What can tend to happen, so does anybody know or have any idea, like if they want to run a study on a horse, you probably know this, to stress that horse, what they do commonly?
Remove it from friends?
Yep. They'll put them on a trailer and haul them around often. And we do that a lot. We're going down the road, we don't think how that can impact the horse, but over time that can actually cause, if you've got a horse that is maybe struggling a little bit with the hindgut, the mucosal layer can begin to thin. There's tight junctions that are in the gut that can tend to start to separate. When that begins to happen, it lets in pathogens. You start seeing allergies, colic episodes, things like that. So if you don't have digestion, you don't have anything.
Interesting. So let me ask you a couple questions off of that. So you mentioned a couple signals, like a little bit of discomfort on the right side, that was my left side, if it's a hindgut issue.
Not always.
Okay.
Usually if you have a pretty decent issue, you can tell.
Okay.
But in those cases, we're always asking, like, have you checked with your vet? It's probably a good idea.
Okay.
So that's when they're going to, as long as you don't have a very advanced case, recommend something like we have a gut reset or a Succeed, a pre and probiotic to try to start helping things and make some improvements.
Okay. What are loose stool is another thing that you mentioned. What are some other things, like if we're just paying attention, if we see these things, maybe we see a couple of them, we should really pay attention to that and start.
Probably the one, especially this time of year, that I see way more than anything is hay belly.
Hay belly. How do you describe that?
So
Just
pasture,
kinda like-
there's not as much pasture through the winter, so there's a lot of round bales being fed, lower quality hay. And I'll hear often, my horse is getting fat. And they're not necessarily fat, they just have a lot of distension. They kind of look like they're pregnant a little bit.
Okay.
Well, really, that is just, they're not digesting properly. And that's common with low quality hay.
I know that visually you can see that. Sometimes when we see our horse on a daily basis, things like that, they don't register because we see them every day.
Yeah.
So this is an argument maybe for taping the horse and really knowing the measurements of the horse.
You could.
Throughout, just so you have a baseline.
You could. It can usually be pretty visual.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Yeah, coat
Yeah,
quality
when your
is
gelding looks
good.
pregnant, like that's probably an issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's definitely a different look to it than just
Right.
a fat horse.
They just start expanding.
Yeah, it's just a little more distension down lower in the abdomen.
Okay. So one of the things you really. Oh,
We had a question.
go ahead.
Yeah, so you see a horse and it's obvious it has hay belly. You're saying it's a digestion issue.
It is.
It's in the hind gut, and it's from the low quality hay that we know is out there in the big round bales.
Yep.
What is the solution?
Yeah, it's a great question because personally I travel all the time, so I use round bales. So I have someone that helps with flake tape, but I also want something out there for them to consume 24/7. So we'll have a little bit of that. That's when I really just get into, I know that hay is going to be, there are round bales out there that are more horse quality. They're all different. I still like to test the hay. But in those cases, I like to provide additional digestive support. And so digestive enzymes really come in handy in those cases. Your senior horses will struggle more so as well.
Our next slide is enzymes. So we'll get into that a little bit more to say, okay, well, what are the things that they might need? Okay. Before I go there, though, like you had talked a lot about, like, hauling your horses. There's a lot of things that stress the horses out that we may not even think of. Kim, you're getting a new horse, right? How long has it been with its previous owner?
16 years.
16 years. So it's coming to you. So this might be
Huge.
a little stressful, right? New friends. You've got 2 other horses, so it's a big deal.
Calm down because you're stressing me.
I'm sorry.
She's already been stressed about this.
I'm sorry. Well, so I just wanted to kind of point out, like I was following a particular barrel racer, and it doesn't matter what the discipline or what you're doing, but like this barrel racer was hauling all the time. She has a top performance horse, and like before they even get on the trailer, days before they start to go out, she's doing like 4 or 5 different supplements. And she does that while she's on the road because she knows what a toll that takes, right? So we don't really even think about that. Like like Crystal said, we throw them in the trailer and we go on the trail ride sometimes, right? So we'll talk about some of those things, but like I want you to realize what some of these elite folks who really recognize the horse as an elite athlete, that they need extra things. Like they're doing some crazy stuff, like a lot of supplements, a lot of therapies, etc. Okay, and I just want to touch on, you said dental health. Like, if the teeth aren't good, doesn't really matter what we're giving them if they can't get it in, right? Jerry?
As far as digestibility, for years we served grain from the co-op where you could actually see the corn and oats and all in it.
Yep.
And we went to pelleted feed for a couple of years out of convenience. We're going back to grain from the co-op. As far as just one being more digestible than the other one, is there a preference, or is it whatever works? Which one do they get the most nutrition out of? Because when I was feeding the pelleted grain, when you poop, you could see some of the pellets still coming out, and they've had their teeth floated and all the good stuff. So, any recommendations on which one has better nutrition than the other?
Sure, girls?
So whole grains it depends on what specific pelleted grain you're feeding and what specific whole grain you're feeding. You can have one be easier to digest than another. Your whole grains, not that one is more nutritional than the other necessarily, because like I said, it depends on what specifically you're feeding. But they will digest those things differently,
Right.
depending on how they're processed as well. So if you're going to go a full like oat grain versus like rolled oats or steeled oats, things like that, they will digest those things differently. So there's some more details needed to really answer that question fully. But if you're going to go for grains from a co-op, from a grain elevator where you're going to get to choose in particular what you're looking for, you can be more particular about what's in it and what you're feeding. Otherwise, if you're going for a pelleted, you're kind of at the mercy of the brands available to you. Whether you can go to different stores or you're going to order it online, they still make the decisions on the ingredients, and you can be a little bit more particular from a co-op, but you may not get the ingredients you want necessarily. They can also make it harder to find. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's a toss-up of what you find works best for you and your horse. You know your horse best, and you know how they've been doing best. So it depends on what changes you saw from when they went from the whole grain versus the pelleted.
Yeah, like I was feeding a senior pelleted, and we talked to co-op, we wanted out some mix, and took some of their suggestions, and they seem to be digesting it well, and a noticeable difference in it.
Yeah.
And so also in the cost,
There's a big difference.
And I think this is what a responsible horse owner does,
Yeah,
right? You
absolutely.
pay attention to see, the same thing doesn't apply to everybody, right? There's some blanket statements that we can make, but every horse is a little bit different. So you're watching, you're paying attention to see how they react to it, what comes out the other end or doesn't come out the other end, right? So
And we have, you have the label up here.
I don't think I have the label.
Oh, you didn't?
Yes, we do. The guaranteed analysis.
So
we
that,
do.
yeah, we'll talk about a guaranteed analysis here in a
Kind of dive
second.
into that
Yeah.
a little further with you. in a
There's
Okay.
also a little difference in when you say you were feeding a senior, that changes it a little bit because a senior feed is a complete feed. That is to be fed. It can be fed to fully replace forage if necessary. So that can give them their full nutritional value, everything they need in their diet if you're feeding according to the package instructions, the guaranteed analysis. That's the big important spot.
like to your point, we live on round bills, we travel a lot, And the grain from the co-op seemed to be a better supplement, because we tried doing the senior, without the forage. And then we was concerned about the ulcers and not eating the stuff for twice a day. And, I can't stay home and feed them 3 or 4 times a day.
Right.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons to everything, right? We gotta
As
weigh it
ideal
out.
as that would be, to go sit there and feed them every 15 minutes, it's not as feasible.
Get rid of the ideas.
Yeah. Jane, you had
It's
something?
different when you're the one scooping up what has passed through.
Well, that's
Yes.
true. It's a whole lot easier to pay attention to it if you're boarding a horse. That's tougher, right?
Yeah, and maybe, depending on the boarding situation, out of your control. If they say that this is what we feed,
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes
It makes it a little bit
extra
harder.
charge, or they
Yeah.
just don't let it at all, or they aren't going to feed the supplements you want.
Yeah, well, and I
the
think this
hay
is
you
why
don't-
sometimes we make
Yep.
mistakes. Like, I've moved barn to barn before I really knew anything, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what you feed? Great. Like, I don't know, you're feeding 50 horses, you know better than me, but that's not always the case, right?
yeah, because
Okay.
it might work for 49 horses and
And-
yours is the 50.
Exactly, totally. Kim?
So this is a good question, but how long does it take from the point of consumption, like eating it, to pooping it out for full digestion?
24, 48?
Oh, it can move along quite a bit quicker. Yeah, so just from point A to point B, I mean, quite honestly, it can vary per horse and based on how digestion is, but I mean, as little as, 4 to 6 hours, honestly.
Wow.
Okay. Okay. Dan, could you flip us to the mineral page? So, go back. Minerals. There you go. So I wanted to talk about some specifics, right? We've already had a question on some specifics. So what are the things that are like common, and maybe it's not just the mineral, maybe it's other things, but common that we're missing, that you find in supplements and feeds and that kind of stuff?
Well, and that's a great question, because I think, honestly, does anybody get overwhelmed when they start to think about everything they're feeding? And you can even look at this list, and it can be slightly overwhelming. It's like, oh my gosh, how do I know that all of this is in what I'm feeding? How do I know that it's in my hay? So I try to simplify things as much as possible for people, and she's got the slide on feed tags after this, but 100% for those of you that did watch or are going to watch the forage, it's a webinar that you have up. What is it? What is the website?
What's the name of the hay? Hay Matters?
Hay Matters.
Okay.
So, and he'll talk a lot about that, but I highly, highly encourage everyone. I mean, 1.5% to 2% of that horse's total body weight should be in forage. So test your hay, Then that will lead you down the road of, where are we? What gaps do we have? What do we need to supplement with? And then when you get into what am I going to feed, that's when the feed tag comes into play. So
Okay.
what's guaranteed?
Do you want to bring that feed tag up?
Yeah. So this is actually one of our feed tags over here, and this is another one, just a random one. But what a company guarantees is what they are legally bound and they are guaranteeing is in that bag. So marketing does a wonderful job, and not just the horse world, dogs, everything. You might see this beautiful bag that says added biotin, added this, but is it in sufficient levels that are going to help? And is that even guaranteed? So the first thing that you want to go to, let's just take a random, if your horse has EPM, like, do I have vitamin E? Is this in here? Well, is it guaranteed? Over here, it is not. Over here, it is. And so you would know on a daily basis, based on the feed rate that you're wanting to feed and your forage, where you're at, and then supplement from there. And that keeps you from over supplementing as well, because that is a common thing that I also do see. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah. Well, sometimes even the brand the label says it has so much in it, and that's more than a horse can absorb. So there's no point in having that much, right? We don't need it. It's just kind of something to draw you
Well,
to
it's tricky. It's just like human stuff, you know. Like, let's say I'm providing a feed, and it's got XYZ in it, and I've got a good quality alfalfa and a Bermuda, and that's what it looks like. But my horse's feet still aren't great, so I'm going to add this supplement, and maybe that supplement is also got enough, because biotin alone will not help improve hoof and hair quality. So a lot of quality hoof and hair products out there will also have amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. Well, if you're dumping that on top of like an extremely fortified feed, well, you could potentially be just getting, and maybe you have 3 or 4 other supplements that you're like, well, you know, we've got a joint here, we've got this, and next thing you know, that horse's body, their organs are working harder to, you know, process everything. And then all of a sudden their hair quality looks bad. And you're like, what is going on? I'm spending $1 million a month. My horse doesn't look good. Yeah. So that's why, kind of going back, and especially like even to your question when you were asking about the senior feed, you know, what is in it? You know, am I getting added digestive support? Am I getting all of the vitamins and minerals that I need?
So tell us about that. Like, there's a lot of things on here. Just, I'm sure, like, some of us are like, oh my gosh, you know, do I have to know about all these separate things? Like, does our feed need to have all of those things in it that's on this label?
Yeah, I would want it.
Okay.
Ideally. And it's guaranteed, you know.
Okay.
So it's a lot of information, but it also, that is peace of mind for me right here. That company is saying, hey, we are going to guarantee that everything is in here. If the FDA comes in and tests and we do not have those exact amounts, that gets pulled, we get fined.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's really good to know. Probably the most important thing I look at, just like with hay, I'm looking at starch and sugar.
Okay.
You know, that's their people go to protein a lot. I look at amino acid quality.
Okay.
And
So break it down a little. So starch and sugar, you say that's the first thing you go to. Why? What's important about
it's not
that?
always the first thing I go to, but in many cases it is, because I see a ton of metabolic horses. I see horses that do have gut health issues. A lot of those horses are, you know, oats, corn, things that are high in starch and sugar can exacerbate that. Maybe I got one that's just a little hot and wild, and I want to keep that starch and sugar level a little bit lower. You know, Cushing's, all sorts of different reasons.
Horses are lovely creatures, and we love them so much. But it's amazing how much they want to injure themselves. And that's outside of just in the pasture getting hurt, but along with their feed, if they've got too much of the starch and sugars, if they didn't start with a metabolic condition, they can end with one. They can founder, and they can give themselves laminitis from that if we overfeed that as well.
Okay, so starch and sugar, big deal, because that's where we can get the laminitis. Who told me that they can't give their horse sweet feeds? Did somebody tell me that today?
We
Yeah?
have an
Yes?
impressive bred horse.
Oh, that's right, yes,
We
okay.
have to be careful in what we feed.
Okay.
And yes, I know you love marketing.
Hey, I had a really good, impressive barrel horse.
I know, yes.
So is starch and sugar NSC on a guaranteed
Yes.
analysis? So does this analysis guarantee it? Or is it just under starch?
So if you look up here where it says starch and sugar,
Yeah.
you just add those together.
So do they always list it as NSC, or is it always listed as just
Not
starch?
usually starch and sugar.
Okay, because that, I know, is kind of confusing.
So an NSC would be a combo total of the two?
Yes.
Okay, and so preferably we want to see that broken out.
Yeah.
Okay, so give us a couple more things, just to try to make this a little bit easier on us, since we're not experts in like all of these things. Like, Lily, what would be the next thing you're looking at on that
The biggest thing I will tend to first look at your protein, fat, fiber. There are some specific ranges you want, not necessarily for protein, that depends on energy level and what kind of work your horse is in. But outside of those three, I go to the calcium and phosphorus. Especially if I'm going to be adding supplements or if I have an analysis of my hay, calcium and phosphorus are so important to have in the correct ratio. Ideally, you want a minimum of a 2-to-1 ratio calcium to phosphorus. And the issue you tend to see is that gets inverted, and you have 2 phosphorus to 1 calcium. And that can cause issues with your horse's bones, that if they don't have enough calcium, they will start to pull calcium from their bones into their bloodstream to be able to function properly. So then you've got brittle bone issues and things like that. There's a lot that can go into that. So I tend to look at the calcium phosphorus first, especially when I'm feeding other things in conjunction with it. I want to make sure my ratios are right.
And that's in hay also.
Hay as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate Crystal saying that, because I said some of these things, like, you're just not getting any value from it if you're overfeeding it. But by the same token, some things, if you overfeed it, like she said, are putting stress on the organs. I feel like it was lysine, maybe, that if you get too much of that, there's another problem. Like, it's
They can have
overwhelming.
problems from pretty much
Too
almost
much or
anything.
Too little
yeah.
of anything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The amino acids. So
Okay.
a protein is made up of amino acids, and so is anybody a barrel racer?
Not
so
really
much.
anymore. Yeah.
So, reason I ask, it's kind of a hot topic on social media right now.
Aminos,
I
yeah.
try to stay away from it, but amino acids are what makes up a protein. So that first limiting amino acid, what I really like to see is a guaranteed level of lysine. And so lysine, methionine, threonine, those are, I go right to it, and that tells me the quality of the protein, really. Because you can get a protein out of a lot of different things, so what kind of protein? It's kind of like our food, I can get protein out of a protein bar, but it's probably not as good as like steak or salmon, and can the horse's body utilize it properly? That's usually what I'm looking for. And that would just usually starts getting into ingredients from there.
Okay. So if we were just wanting to know a little bit more, if we could find out about, if we could read a little bit or whatever on the starch and sugar, if we could understand what goes into good proteins more, like those are just a few of the things, and then the calcium and the phosphorus, like those would be maybe the starting points of just getting a little bit more information for ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think that's a lot to even start with. It's a lot to take in because you gotta consider everyone that's looking at this is also like, oh, now I gotta look at my hay too. Oh, and there's pasture and spring pastures coming up, and then kind of to the point about earlier, like what time do I turn my horse out to not have such rich grass out there in the spring?
Right.
One thing I do really like to see also in a feed is added digestive support. So kind of going back to the round bales and, like struggling with digestion, things like that. This particular label, it has digestive enzymes added. And so that's going to be really like the key that helps unlock those nutrients and helps them break things down a little bit.
Where
Okay.
are they
And-
on that?
Is that the
Down
ones at the
here,
bottom?
so we've got probiotics and then enzymes
Okay.
down
Okay.
here.
So you mentioned pro and prebiotics before a little bit. Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
We had one of her slides up there for it.
Oh,
I'm sure.
Yep.
I'm sure that was one of the ones we pulled.
Was it?
Oh yeah. It was somewhere in there.
I don't think we pulled that
No,
one.
we didn't pull that
Nope.
one.
Okay.
Well,
Go cold turkey. Just
oh, wait.
talk about it.
You could go to the
brain.
show the cute brain.
There we go. Your mood, nice, or your mare's mood.
I like this just in general. I mean, kind of go into pre and probiotics. There's all different strains. We have a product in particular that each tube is like 16 billion CFUs per tube, which is a lot.
It sounds like it.
But it's very similar to humans. Like we know when we're under a lot of stress, or maybe we're taking an antibiotic or a lot of ibuprofen, like we need this support. And so with our horses, we're putting them on NSAIDs. We're loading them on the trailers. We're doing all sorts of things that are stressing them, and they just stress by nature on their own. And so having that added support really helps, kind of going back to talking about, keeping a healthy population of good and bad bacteria. So there's a good balance, and we're not getting gassy and bloated and trying to colic. And pre and probiotics will help tremendously with that.
Okay, good.
You got a question over here?
Oh, yeah.
So can you go back to the feed tag?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
You caught him not paying attention. I like it.
I did it earlier. I was like, wait, what's
How do you read this, first of all?
What's that?
How do you read this? So the crude protein on the left, it has a minimum of 12%. Okay, 12% of what?
12% total. So protein in general is just a math equation.
Yeah,
So
but is it 12% of 1 pound will be protein?
it's different based on per feed. So this feed in particular is, let's say you got a 1,000-pound horse, you feed 0.3 pounds per 100 pounds. So if I have a 1,000-pound horse that's chilling, he's not doing anything for the winter, he gets 3 pounds a day. You're going to get that in that. So there's different feed rates for each different feed that's out there. So you might see, for instance, I have at Bluebonnet, we've got a $35, $40 bag of feed, and I was at a farm and he said I have to have my bag of feed at $16. Well, there was several hundred head involved in that one, and I could feed his farm less expensive on the $35 was his. It was a little over because the feed rate was much lower. So when you're looking at these percentages and what's guaranteed, that's in the required amounts that you're feeding.
So let me ask you, does this not all add up to 100%? And so this is a 12% of it is protein? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah. Yeah, so.
Okay, so 5% of this bag of feed is sugar, right?
Or are you saying it's like the human labels where it's 2% of what your daily needs are?
It's by the serving. So like she was talking about, every feed bag is going to have a few things required of them. You obviously got the name, you've got how much that bag weighs, you've got your guaranteed analysis, and then you've got the feeding instructions. And the feeding instructions is what this is going off of. So if, like she said, you've got, we'll keep it easy, you got a pound per 100 weight. So typical horse, 1,000 pounds, you've got that 1,000-pound horse, you got the perfect average, and you want 1 pound a day for that horse to be fed. That is what is in that 1 pound. This is what it's telling you is in all of that feed that you're giving them. So they'll get that 12% protein requirement for their body in it. We've got a lot of different levels of protein for different activity levels, or for broodmares, or for foals, things like that. This is a pretty low one. This would be like a maintenance level. If your horse is out in the pasture, just kind of
Well, let me clarify though. Is it 12% of what their daily need is, or is it this, the protein is
12% of the pound.
Okay, so 12%, okay, so yeah, so then this does add up to 100%, and 12% of that serving is in proteins.
And when you're calculating, so a lot of times when I'm looking, I probably am going to get in the weeds here. I don't know if I should, but when I'm looking at, I hardly ever look at protein, just because.
It was the first one out there.
Yeah.
I'm still confused. 12% of what? There has to be a label.
Recommended daily allowance, or is it?
Yeah.
12%
For that, so a protein percentage is, I do believe that would be 12% times nitrogen. So it's a mathematical equation but this is based on the horse's needs. So I think I'm understanding your question. I don't know if I am though.
The way Lilly was explaining, if I understand it, is it's 12% of the volume of that serving, right? Did I understand that correct? The serving recommended on that by the package for your horse's weight, 12% of that is
Comes from proteins.
Did I understand that correctly?
That's my understanding of it. You correct me if I'm wrong on that. That it's of that feed rate, though it does, again, all the rest of them, since we're using protein as the example, the rest of those percentages, you want to see those differently. You want to see the different percentages based off of what your horse is actively doing, or, you know, their breed and that kind of thing. I don't know if that is answering your question.
Yeah.
So like, okay, let's not pick protein then, pick magnesium. That has 0.45%. Does that mean that all the other things that my horse is eating needs to add up to 0.55 to get up to 100? Like, to get up to 1? Like,
No, not necessarily. So all of these, horses are going to be very different, you know, horses, people, dogs, all of very different and very different requirements. So what's guaranteed, and the way that it's listed on this particular one is it effective levels for that horse to meet their daily requirements.
Okay, Dan, can you look this up and try to get a better,
A better explanation.
yeah.
so like for ascorbic acid, 50 milligrams per pound. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
How many milligrams per 100-pound body weight does a horse need?
That,
That would be feeding instructions, right?
That would be,
It all
yes.
depends on those feeding instructions and the
It's a 50-pound
specific.
bag of feed. 12% of that bag is protein. 0.8% is lysine of the bag of feed.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking, because, yeah,
I mean, it's that simple. I don't care what your horse is or how.
right.
But you were right, it all adds up to 100.
Okay, now, it does, so we think it comes up to a little bit, but that's the general principle, is out of this bag, or out of this serving, 12% of it comes from this, 5% of it comes from that, et cetera.
Of the
Or
bag.
5% of it is this.
And
Like
it's
if you were making a
minimum
stew, you
12.
would say it's 50% potatoes
And
and
this,
25% meat.
okay.
That, I think that's.
12% of that serving, the way Lily was describing it, so. if the
Which is the same thing of the bag, or, you know,
Okay,
It's
so
serving
the
that
bag,
bag.
it works out the same.
Yeah.
Exactly, so.
okay,
Which is why, like, when
Okay.
you've got, like, your mare and foal feeds, you will see based on each horse's needs and the feed volume, it changes. So, for instance, like our mare and foal feed, you would see that go up to a 16% protein. And then we've got like a 10 fat, 10 protein. That drops down a little bit lower for horses that probably more trail riding, you know. So each bag, based on your horse's specific needs, is how that changes, and then the feed levels change based on
Yeah.
performance.
So as an owner, we still have to know and understand, I use my horse a lot compared to other people, so I'm going to need different ratios.
Yes.
So I should be doing research on that to say, you know what, a 10% bag wouldn't work, a 12% bag would, or, you know, that kind of thing, right? So we need to understand that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and most of that is listed out in the feeding instructions. Is that one on here? I don't know if it is.
Not-
Okay.
yeah.
So the feeding instructions, you'll have maintenance, light work, moderate work, heavy work, and then your brood mares and growing horses, then that really changes.
They're different.
But, you know, and that's probably the most common thing that I see. You know, when I go to a barn, I would say 8 times out of 10, like, what are you feeding a scoop? You know, and so then just helping people understand that.
What that means.
Makes massive differences, because sometimes, you know, they've switched feed 3 times because this one's a hard keeper and this one's fat, and it's very confusing. And so when you help them kind of understand, well, hey, you could probably save some money, you know, and adjust this. And
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
First off, did that answer your question? Did that make more sense? It's 12% of that.
Is there a place that lists like how much, so if you have, let's say your
Yeah.
horse is healthy adult in X activity level, what is the recommended daily amount
Of these things.
That's
Yeah,
where-
so
that's where I was gonna go.
Lily,
next.
didn't we looked up
Of each?
I think we
Okay,
Googled
that
it
makes
and we
sense.
found a calculator.
So, I made a calculator.
Okay.
There's the National Horse Council has a big old expensive book, and it's got different recommendations for percentages of all of these and more for different breeds of horses, different ages of horses, and different activity levels. Every page of that is numbers on numbers, a lot of this for those explanations. So I have a calculator based off of that for different energy levels and different weights. All of that goes into it, and based off of what grain you're feeding, what supplements you're feeding, what hay you're feeding, if we've got an analysis of it, that all goes into their recommendations. So there are recommendations out there. The question is if you can find them for free, ideally, or if you're willing to spend whatever it was on that book to get all the super detailed stuff out of it.
And we don't probably want all the super detailed, because
It's a lot.
yeah.
It can be.
Because that was
Is that-
50% of the question I was gonna ask. Do you have that calculator available yet, or is that something you're using?
I have the calculator
So
because
might be something
it's not the most user-friendly calculator.
So they probably need to consult with you on. like,
That's something I
what are the
use with my
questions
clients.
that they give you
Need to
and
make
you
an
can
app.
do. Because the other,
If I knew how.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not as simple as like, this is the daily recommendation. It really is how old, all those things. Yeah.
That bag
But
is.
take Lily's card to talk with her a little bit about that.
So,
Okay.
digestible fibers. I have more detailed, there are some QR codes over here. I've got some more detailed specifically for hay analysis, but it gives you general definitions as well of how to interpret a hay analysis. That will give you some more information on ADF and NDF specifically.
Okay, so she's got QR codes up here for a couple different things on the front of the table. Okay. All right.
Got another question in the back.
Oh,
it really, to me, it goes, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we're getting in the weeds and we're missing a baseline piece. 50% of it was the question you asked, which is, how do I know what my horse needs, right? Which is kind of that's the answer you're talking about. There's a calculator based off of the horse. The other half of it is, how do you know, how do we set a baseline on what we're even getting? Like, what are they getting now before you start making these adjustments? Does that make sense? Can you guys explain how they know where they're?
Are you kind of describing, and what I'm hearing, and I hope I'm hearing right, usually when it's specific to each horse, because it's so hard for me to say, your horse needs this, your horse needs this, that's usually when I come in on a consultation and I find out about, what's your pasture turnout look like, what does your forage look like, what does your workload look like, have we been on NSAIDs, have we done this, that, and the other, and then I can usually from there dial into, I start getting in the weeds then. So I mean, and you probably, my nutrition consults are 45 minutes to an hour.
The reason I'm getting in the weeds is because I'm a molecular biologist and I'm used to the weeds. I like the numbers.
No.
That makes sense.
I think
That's why I like numbers.
No, I think it's great. I mean, but that is usually on an individual horse need basis that we just dial in on what they might need there.
so first thing would be get your hay tested.
Well, the problem is I'm bored.
Right.
No.
So they should have a certification of the hay. Lily, tell us
I
about
don't
that.
know that they all buy it from the same, or they all get it from the same place.
Well, that in the same place will be different through different cuttings and different seasons and everything. But a lot of boarding barns, the most recent one I had been at, they buy their hay in bulk. So they've got it through most of the year already. So if you've got it coming in all at one time, generally it's going to stay pretty similar. So if you go out to the hay barn where they store all the extra and you take some from that and some from what they're feeding currently to go send out for a hay analysis, you get the general baseline of that to get into where we want to add grains or supplements and that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's a place to start. And then if they are feeding grains, ask for the label.
You can get those really easy
now we're
online.
getting
Most
somewhere.
stores have the guaranteed analysis on them. Easy to find.
Okay.
Because once you know what your horse on average based on the calculator should need, and then you know something about the nutrients, then you've got a baseline, and then these two ladies can start doing a consultation to dial you in based off the horses, what you observe and that sort of. Is that accurate? Is that
Absolutely.
kind of the process?
Okay. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to take us back out a little bit. Tell us about some of the current impacts of nutrition on the horse in just the general horse industry. Like, what are the things that you guys are seeing out there? Probably really on the negative side, but maybe give us some, like, here's a really good example of good nutrition too. So what do you got?
Sure.
I think what I've seen definitely over the last year is anybody know what an ionophore is?
What?
Ionophore?
No.
So, yeah, so that is, this year it was a very hot topic for a moment. It's been around for a long time. So ionophores are typically found in the cattle industry, but it is an ingredient that can kill a horse in incredibly tiny, tiny amounts. So actually at Bluebonnet, our mill, we are 100% ionophore free, 100% med free for that reason, because just cross-contamination could kill. And it did happen this year. There was a bucking horse, I don't know if anyone saw that yet.
Oh, yeah.
Wiped them all out, and it was ionophores.
What are they? What is an ionophore?
It's a drug essentially that helps with cattle growth.
So that was the situation where the same plant made horse feed and cattle feed, and like you can't give cattle feed to horses because of some of the ingredient, and it got crossed over, and it was sent. So there was.
Okay, so it was a man.
It was the manufacturer, so it was.
It's not
yeah.
natural?
Where it gets difficult with that is we are a 100% equine focused company, and a lot of companies that you see out there, they've got a big focus on equine, but bovine and swine are a huge part of their business. So they have to meet those needs too. So you will see some, the thing to look for, so we are ionophore free. There are some mills that are ionophore safe. That means
Is whether they're there physically all the time or not. So feeding from having someone else feed your horse, the consistency of it, what they're actually doing, they have a good hand in what they're actually feeding, but what is actually going on is kind of the biggest issue with my clients in particular. But then I'm seeing there's a lot. It just goes back to the over supplementation and too much of these different little words are really hard today, y'all. Words are so hard.
It is. It's been a long day, right?
It's been so long. It's
Friday.
The different vitamins and minerals, we get too much of those, and that can bring you into the toxicity. Anything can be toxic. We hear it all the time for people. Well, this is toxic or that's toxic. Well, how much are you having? That changes it. So much of the time, what I'm seeing, people coming in, well, I'm spending so much. We did a little bit of this earlier. I'm spending so much. I'm putting so much into them, and I'm not seeing the benefits. Well, you're spending so much. You have so many supplements. They all have kind of the same thing. You're putting a lot into them, and your horse is peeing it right back out. They're pissing the money out. You don't have it anymore. So they're just, it's a lot of not getting the benefits of what you think you're putting in, but based on not necessarily understanding their daily needs and requirements on all these little things.
Well, and don't you think that happens though? Because like, my friend at the barn told me I should, has had great success with this. So I think it sounds great. And so I added in.
Yeah, my dressage horse and your barrel horse, they definitely have the exact same requirements.
Needs. Right. So
all the time.
I think a lot of times we don't go to an expert, or we don't do the test that we need to know. We just, somebody we know that we think they know their things, like they're feeding it to their horse, and we're like, oh yeah, they have a better coat. I'd like a better coat on mine, so I'd like my tail to be longer or whatever, right?
Yeah. We want a lot of that, and then sometimes it's just genetics too. You want that better coat, sometimes that horse isn't going to have it.
So even if this is overwhelming, and I think it's, we've got to take a moment, learn a little bit more so we're better informed, right? So which leads us into, I'll let you go ahead.
So is there a general guideline? I know all the horses have different needs depending on where they're at in their life and how active they are. So is there a different guideline for each of those categories, not some complicated book? Because if we do give different supplements, if we want to add like an omega supplement, but it has a lot of other stuff, we need to make sure we're not overdoing it with some duplicate things that we're already giving. And I can read all the labels, but where's my guide to tell me I need to back off on something else if I'm gonna give this?
That's a great question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The general guidelines I see don't tend to get into the nitty gritty of all the detailed vitamins and minerals and things. The general guidelines I see are for the everyday horse owner that wants to go buy the right thing for their horse's energy requirements and not necessarily based off of other supplements. So you'll generally see the requirements for proteins and fats, and the calcium phosphorus is what you tend to see, as opposed to more requirements for all the vitamins and minerals. Unfortunately, at this time, I haven't tend to found them.
Is there a guideline that gives maxes so that we don't do anything that has a negative impact? Does anyone say, don't give more than this many whatever parts per whatever of vitamin D or selenium or something that might be like a definite bad situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of, because it's going to vary per supplement depending on what it is. And I think the most important part, and I think you'd agree with this too, is that a lot of that stuff you'll want to individually be like, okay, how much of this am I already feeding? I'm looking at this supplement, it has this in it, like where could I be here for a 1,200 pound horse?
No, that's not what she's asking. Like, let's say cobalt, 8 parts per million. What is toxic for any horse?
Yeah.
300 parts per million?
Right.
You can never go above that?
That's where I was still going. So what I'm saying is like the main thing to keep an eye on, especially so your vitamins and minerals are probably the things that most commonly we see go over. So when we don't have an ingredient one up here, but you want to look at, your zinc, your copper, your manganese, and looking at those things. And for instance, if you pull up, going back to I'm using this because it's simple, but the hoof and hair, if it's got all of those same things in it, you're probably overdoing it. When it gets down to kind of, to your point, you want to look at, really specific ingredients. You can, book a consult, dive into those and look for each horse what's toxic, because we could go on for days on.
I'll tell you, in looking for like the stuff that we keep at the store and trying to understand the supplements better and what we should carry and what we shouldn't and what product might be better and, than another, I haven't found one source that really breaks it down easily.
I was going to say, I don't have a particular resource to give you right now on that, but I can work on finding something.
Make one.
Yeah, there are
It'd be a good app.
Yeah. There are books out there on nutrition that, again, they tend to be kind of overwhelming. Like it's big books. But here's, I think, how you break it down. Look up lysine. Look up calcium. Look up like one thing at a time. And sometimes if you look up articles on horse nutrition, it'll only talk about 10 things. Like it won't tell you all the things. It'll focus in on just a handful of stuff. Look up each one. Like if you're considering a hoof and hair supplement. Okay, well let's go look at the main things that are in those, because that's probably 3 or 4 different ingredients that really affect hoof and hair. So let's go look at those ingredients and see, am I worried about any toxicity when I get past a certain point? What's the most amount they can absorb? Etc. Does that make sense?
If you take one of my cards and send me a text or an email, I'll work on finding some of that for you.
Yeah. It is not easy.
See what
it
I
is
can do.
not
Because
easy.
you would almost have to go ingredient by ingredient.
Yes.
Right, but I mean, you guys are saying that's what we should do.
Yeah. Yes. Let me go to Jerry and then I'll come back over.
To an extent, yeah.
I only pretend to be a vet on TV,
Yeah.
but from what I know, the majority of those, if you feed too much, the horse will just urinate it out.
Not all though. That's
For
the
the
problem.
most part.
That was my question.
Well,
Yeah.
it's valuable.
Which ones can they not urinate out? And just on a very basic, I ain't trying to get down in the weeds, should we be watching that if we overfed that they can't urinate out, that will do damage? Just for a short list.
It's more getting into your,
I'm just trying to get it back
It's
to.
probably the same as humans. I mean, vitamin K is a fat soluble vitamin, so
Right.
that's probably one of them.
Well, see, we raise dogs, and there's so many vitamins you can't give to a Rottweiler because they can't urinate them out, and it will do severe damage.
So the oil-based.
Some of them are.
Okay.
Now, on a horse, which ones can they not urinate out, which will do damage? Should we be looking at those and then get down in the weeds on everything else?
Okay, so just a couple of quick ones. The manganese is one of them. That can cause diarrhea. I don't know that can, maybe vomiting and stuff. I don't know that can be completely toxic or kill a horse, but that's not good. Gosh, I know there was, let me think about it.
What are you looking
I'm trying to look back at my notes that I had, because I was literally going one by one as we were looking at like hoof and hair supplements and things like that. I was looking at this, and I found 3 or 4 things that were toxic with too much. Dan?
Let me ask your guys' opinion on this, because I feel like, here's what I feel like. I feel like we're sort of we're at a point where these types of questions start crossing a line between nutrition and you need to have a vet consulting as well. I think that's probably, because you're really starting to get into some details that it kind of covers 2 disciplines in a way. First off, am I correct in that?
not really. I mean, just nutrition in general. I think where you're probably at is we provide, so for instance, like providing all of this is specific so that you know exactly what you're getting. I think when I'm looking to add any supplement, it's just imperative, especially in the supplement world, because they are not regulated well, make sure it has a guaranteed analysis. There's some out there that don't, and they get by with it. I don't know how, but because before, in my opinion, before you go to add anything, just take a look. You know, are you crossing over with a lot of those? Mm-hmm. And then if it starts looking like maybe, you know, that's when you dial into each one specifically.
Yeah.
These feeds are made to give your horse the nutrients they need as long as you're feeding by their rate. That's the biggest part, is if you're feeding by their rate. So, like you were saying earlier, if you're going to go and add a supplement, a selenium and vitamin E supplement, very, very popular supplement, you're probably, if that's already in your guaranteed analysis, you're probably about to start overfeeding it. Is it necessarily to a toxic level? No, not necessarily. It could be one of the things that they're just going to pee right out, and you're just going to you're spending money you don't need to spend.
So that's a good rule of thumb is water soluble, okay, probably not toxic. Fat soluble, we need to pay more attention to it. However, if their hind gut isn't in great shape, even the water soluble things can become toxic because they're not moved out of the body. So it's complex. It's like there's a lot to know about it, and it's not, again, I know that they're saying, well, it depends, and it does. So this is where we've got to start talking to the vet and start looking at, you know, your horse and what it's experiencing.
Well, actually, just to build on what you're saying a little bit, so the foundation of what I do on a daily basis, more so than, yes, I work for a feed and supplement company, but I would say 90% of what I do is I spend my time looking at the foundation of that horse, which is the gut health, because at the end of the day, you know, I've run into multiple cases where that horse's gut is just not great. We're not absorbing nutrients properly. So even I'm providing this feed and the horse won't eat it. They're picky. We have loose stool. We have allergies, and those are all indicative of a gut issue. And so if I can work with that particular horse and heal that gut, then we start utilizing our nutrients properly. And that is probably more so than ever worrying about over supplementing. That's probably what I see 90% of the time.
Yeah. So unless you go take a lot of classes in this and get us, you know, be certified, you're probably never going to get to I really know what I need to know level. Ideally, what we want you to understand is, well, here's some thoughts I never knew before. I want to be able to ask questions of my barn, whoever's feeding, my grain, elevator that's putting my feed together, my vet, and then, bring in a more of an expert in nutritionist to help you understand how do we look at the foundation of the horse, et cetera, to be able to determine what's going on. Yes.
My question is totally different.
Okay.
Because you do supplements. We have been having hockey issues at our barn. I mean, it's just, so I was wondering, do you feel one way of introducing it over? We've had somebody on a powder, we've had somebody on a pill, we've had somebody on a liquid, we've had, this, that, and the other. You go into the vet, you tell her, and she's like, well, I don't know, I just read this big article that said if you don't do it intravenously, it's not going to do anything at all, and you're just wasting your money. And it's just like,
There's another fun one, the most frustrating but most accurate answer of it depends, again, because horses are so picky, and you'd be surprised what they actually can feel with their lips. The start of this whole digestive system is they're going to go dig up and find the one thing they want to eat. If they know that grain is yummy and that tastes really good and they feel this pill, what's that? I don't know what that is. That tastes bad. I'm not eating that again.
getting it in them hasn't been a problem.
But
Nice.
One was better.
That's
than the
impressive.
other.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we can get them in it.
That's
They all
impressive.
eat. That's not a problem. We just didn't know was powder better than the jelly liquid stuff or the pill.
It just depends on what it is. So one thing that I do watch, so specifically, I don't get into brands, but look at that ingredient list. There's
They're all kind of the same thing. It was kind of like chondroitin and,
Yeah.
they were all kind of the same thing. They were just delivered different.
There's one, so there's a product out there now, and it's a gastric buffer, and I think it does a great job. It's a liquid, does a great job of making that horse feel a little bit better, but then similar to like the things that we put in our bodies, it's got polysorbate 80, 20, and then some caramel coloring, and then those things are known to cause some inflammation and some breaking down epithelial cells in the hindgut. So it makes me question. There's not a lot of studies out there on horses, but in particular things like that, I like to go to the ingredient list, what's in there. Very similar to feed. So when you're looking at a feed bag, a lot of times you'll see grain products, forage products, and that is legal terminology. So as the price of commodities change, they can keep their label the same, but the ingredients change. So one thing that I'm really big about is I want to see that it's an open label. I can read what's in it specifically. And, or any of those chemicals. Powders, some horses, just don't like them if you got one that'll eat them. Usually they're pretty good. Pellets, it depends on how they're processed because they do have to be heated. So sometimes they can lose a little bit of quality through that heating process. So and then when you get into liquids, how is that, what is that liquid made up of? Do they have emulsifiers like the polysorbate 80, things like that in there? It just depends on the product, really.
I tend to be I had a horse that had some joint and some foot issues. I tend to be a skeptic on the supplement portion of that. Everyone's got a supplement and everyone's got one they want to sell for something, whether it's heaves or joint issues, navicular, all of those kinds of things. There's always something. That's one, especially if you're going to get into which way is best to feed the method that you're actually giving it. I would have to go to independent studies and different research on it to find if you're talking about effectiveness, not palatability necessarily.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to go to some studies to find what is necessarily the most effective.
We've had a study out on New Zealand green-lipped mussel. So we actually have a bone, I can't talk today.
Did you just say New Zealand?
New Zealand green-lipped mussel, yep. And
Okay.
there's studies out there on it. It really helps with inflammation. And we have a product, it's called Rewind Joint, and that's what it is.
Okay. But here, like if you've got several people, like this is a great opportunity, even though it's a problem at your barn.
It just seems like
Sorry.
everybody's things are.
But if everybody's doing something a little different, like this is a great opportunity to say, okay, like let's kind of do our study and say, okay, well, these horses are getting it by powder, this one's getting an injection, this one's getting it this way, and see if we feel like anybody's coming out ahead on,
Well, that's kind of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And then one was like, well, mine seems to be doing really good. So we'd all switch over to that one for a month or two, and then
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, I think mine's been better on the other, and we go back to the other, and then back again. Mine's was our pill, because she's just.
Well, then again, you have to take the individual animal into consideration,
Well,
what they're,
right, there is some of
what
that
they're
as well.
actually ingesting and all of that,
Yeah.
and it'll all change.
yeah, and I would say, like, for your powders and your liquids and your pellets, watch what's coming out the other end. And look what's in the feed bucket afterwards. Like, do we have, like she was saying, their lips are very sensitive, and you know how they can get around things to, to get what they want. Is there powder left in the bottom of that bucket? Is there liquid left in the bottom of that bucket?
That was the only thing I did, because I did the powder for a while. That
Yeah.
was the only thing. I thought it was like she needed,
Yeah.
but then it's like, oh, there's still some of the
that powder
at the
bottom.
all of it.
Because they can move that, they can brush that aside, right? So that's just, you just got to pay a little bit more attention, right?
In that particular
Yeah.
case, my horse, he was on some supplements for a while. This was before I got into equine nutrition, but not finishing the powder all the way. I forgot to bring feed to a show where I needed to give him a supplement, and I beat the crap out of some treats, and I poured water on it so they would actually get all the powder up out of it. And personally, I like feeding in general soaked feed to make sure it's expanded properly, because I feed pellets, and I also feed beet pulp in particular, which is why I want to make sure I'm doing that. But so it's all expanded, so less likely for them to choke. I don't want to pay the vet to come out and deal with that. Yeah, I don't want to deal with it. And then that also makes sure they can't pick out the medication unless it's an actual full pill, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right, let's talk about education, and then we'll see what other questions we've got. Hold on just a sec, Kim. We've already talked a little bit about it, like look up the particular line item that we're interested in, right? Get the hay tested, that kind of stuff. What other educational things would you have in mind? Because obviously none of us know as much as we should.
I think for management, has anybody got a chubby one? Like easy keeper?
Easy keeper.
Do I count?
I think my favorite thing, honestly, right now, and I've got an old mare that she is metabolic, and I play with different things all the time. But I know you guys just started carrying the hay chicks net too, and it's just management. How often can we be out there? We know we don't want them to go for hours without forage, but man, we'd sure like to keep it in front of them. Those, I really like to talk about management in different ways, because I do find people struggling with like, well, how do I do this? And even boarding barns sometimes will be willing to work with that too.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
If they're like, we're not going to, we feed hay 3 times a day.
I mean, so we started carrying them because I was like, oh my God, do we have to? And yes, we did, because we got so many requests for them. The tests done on hay chicks say that you'll save like a ridiculous percentage. Dan, can you look that up on Hay Chick site of the hay? Like they do work. And yeah,
I'm obsessed with them.
Yeah, this is, I don't know what it is. There's something magic about it. We've got some other hay stuff, the hay bags and hay nuts that are slow feed and that kind of stuff. But man, people, if they have hay chicks, they swear by them. Yeah, and they've got a really cool, I forget what it's called. It has a square at the top. So if you're in a stall, like you can hook it up. So it's just the hay bag, and then you can bring it down and throw the flakes in there and put it. Super cool. I think it's called a feed up feeder.
They work pretty good too.
Yeah.
We like just using half-dome nets.
Right.
We have round bell ones, and we do have the ones that are in the bags. The nice thing about that, we go out of town and we have someone who's coming to take your things. If you have
the half bell nets or the smaller nets that you hang in your barn, in their stall.
Yeah.
You can pre-measure them all out, and of course, we have we have enough for a whole week. So, for their stall, we have a round bell out, done. But then if you have someone else coming into your barn who feeds, if you pre-do all those,
Okay.
you know that your horse is getting
I
the
love
right
that.
amount of hay in their stall.
Well, and
When you do the open ones and drop them in, and you're trusting
Somebody else to do it.
somebody else,
Yeah.
Think that much.
a flake's
Yeah.
not a flake. It's
Well, and this is management, because like, frankly, we have these little cheap hay bags at the store. They're $5. Like, come and buy them because I'm trying to get them out. But they have the hole, like the open hole on the front.
It goes everywhere.
How much of that do you lose, right? Like, and then you think, well, I've given the horse enough hay. 3/4 of it's on the ground now. So if you thought they had hay in front of them, helping those gastric, acids stay down, because that's what the foraging does. They were done with that in 10 minutes, and it's mostly on the ground. What's the
On their
hay chick?
bale bags, they're claiming about 94% usage as a minimum of your hay, so
So you're only losing 6% of the hay. Think of those.
as a
Yeah.
minimum, that's their bale bag.
Think of those round bales out there and how much ends up on the ground that they're just trampling over.
There
Okay.
are a lot of different hay management things,
Yeah.
like safe vaults. Working at barns, I couldn't get into these things. The horses sometimes could. It took me a minute to figure them out, but they've got all kinds of standalone things for in a stall. I personally think they take up too much space. I don't want to deal with that. But for outside too, you can fit multiple whole bales in it and pull the net over, and it's slow feed, and they can't just toss the whole bale out. There's all kinds of things like that.
What other education
But
things? Yeah.
Education, we see a lot of things. I'm sure we're all on Facebook. Everyone's on Facebook. We're all in the equestrian groups, and we see all the information, all the questions on there, all the answers, and they all contradict each other, usually. You never know what's real. Even if they don't contradict each other, the biggest thing, always trust but verify. Okay, yeah, sure, that's right. Let me go look it up. I'm gonna go find out for myself to make sure I know what's actually going on. And honestly, I think we don't spend enough time looking into these things. I started on this because I saw that I took a class and I said, wow, there's a lot of stuff I had no idea about for nutrition. And so I went looking for other classes, and I kept taking classes until I ended up with a certificate in it. And now I want to help other people figure that out. And there are free classes and classes that take an hour or so to give you a whole bunch of information that you may not use, but you have it now. So I can't put enough emphasis on go and find that easy little college class that takes an hour to do, that will give you some detailed information about how the gut works, where they, what is the word I'm looking for? Digest. Wow, it's been a long week, y'all. Yeah. Where they digest different parts of the hay or their grains and things, and how that really affects their body in different ways. What different things you can add into feeds, or you want to look for in feeds that will benefit them the most.
Yeah.
All of those things are available, and some of the book of the National Horse Council nutrition book is in a lot of these things. They take some screenshots. Maybe they shouldn't, but they do. So you can find some really good information for free everywhere. You just got to look for it.
Yeah, I mean, start where you're at. If you've got a chunky monkey, start there and see what we might need to be paying attention to bring that weight into line, right? If we've got some hock issues at the barn or joint issues, start there, right? Just break it down in some way.
And not just someone's blog either. We can find studies very easily, and it's not hard to read a lot of these studies either. So find something that's actually verified information.
Yeah.
On the back of, I think she put my card on the table. On the back of the card is Dr. Jimmy. That's our director of nutrition. She has a podcast out, and so it is. Have you the Feed Room Chemist?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
nice.
a great podcast.
That's a good podcast.
And
okay.
Great podcast.
She's got more cards up here if you didn't get one at the table.
I got a bunch. The Feed Room Chemist, but on the back of the card there's a QR code there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But she will reference studies. She'll give you all the information, and it's not a whole episode of her talking about product. It's a whole episode of her talking about equine specific, concerns, or most of its concerns, it seems like. And then she will reference where you can go and look at these things, and very, very good podcast. And that, I think that's what I like about her the most, is she is very scientific, and she'll put the links. You can go to the website and find show notes and go to specific studies for that.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to second that one, because that's a great podcast. I'll listen to it while I'm doing feed and night checks, cleaning stalls. I highly recommend her.
Love that. So podcast, there's plenty of books if you want to get into that. Check out one thing at a time, like one ingredient at a time. There's online courses or in-person courses that might be an hour to 2 hours, minimal time input, but even if you don't use all the information, hopefully there's a couple nuggets in there that you can take back and use for you, right? And just remember, the friend that posts on social media and tells you what to do, like their horse may not weigh the same, be boarded at the same barn, have the same issue, like they're not on the same hay, they're not on the same grain as you, and that's why it works for them. And it's not that they're wrong, it's just that your situation and your horse's situation is different, right? Mm-hmm. All right, final questions. I know we've gone a couple minutes over here. Yes?
How much, back to kind of this, how much salt do you recommend? Because we know a lot of feeds don't put enough salt because it would alter the taste.
Free choice. Salt blocks, mineral blocks, loose salt, free choice.
Salt blocks are good for the horses.
I force it. I do a tablespoon per 500 pounds.
How many tablespoons of
Yeah.
loose salt do you recommend?
Tablespoon per 500.
So one in the morning, one at night?
Yeah, if you got a 1,000-pound horse. I still provide, I've got salt blocks there, but I still force it too, just because I've got one there that.
Ration balancer as well, and so I was like, I felt bad giving them a full tablespoon, but if they need it, then it's kind of.
Well, so
I've got one that sifts it out.
The most important, and I didn't include this slide that Crystal had, but she had it on her slides, that one of the most important things in nutrition for these horses is water.
It is the most.
So if they're not drinking enough water, having the salt block out, great, just free, they can have it any time. The only thing is you can't measure how much they take. Did they go lick it today or not? So if you force feed it, then okay, now I'm helping them have enough water. Right?
I really do that through the cold winter months.
That's a great question.
Just because.
Now that sounds weird. I would really want to do it during the heat of the summer, but it's important all year long, right? So okay, good. What else? What other questions? Yes.
Kind of back to the types. Maybe this is more of what can we go into depth, but I would love to more concentrate versus complete, because not every senior is a complete senior anymore, because they've got all these concentrate seniors, so that it's like, well, when do I feed a concentrated senior versus, and then kind of going back to this, a ration balancer kind of eases, and I know my horses are at least getting a baseline of all of this confusingness on the guaranteed analysis.
So, I want to make sure I understand the question properly. So, how do you decide for each horse whether?
Yeah, just more in depth of concentrated versus complete, and especially with senior. And
usually
senior concentrate versus complete senior.
Yeah, if you have an older horse that is dental compromised,
that's when you would start a complete.
For sure. Yep.
But when would the concentrated senior, if you just want more fat?
So for the most of your senior feeds out there, the bulk of them are meant to be complete. Specifically because we're just planning on that horse getting older, and their ability to break down fibers goes down, their dental health declines. Back in the day, it was common for a horse to be super skinny, and they were like, oh, he's old. And everyone was like, okay with that. Well, that we've learned more as time goes on. So, if you've got a horse that honestly seems to, maybe they're in their early 20s, they are consuming their hay fine, their dental condition's fine, everything's great, you can probably still maintain on more of a concentrated feed.
Gotcha, yeah.
And
Okay.
ration
It's really
balancers,
when the teeth-
what's that?
It's really when the teeth go.
When the teeth go, yeah, but kind of going back to digestive health too, some of those senior horses, even if you got a lower quality hay, and they can struggle to break that down too. And if they've got inflammation in their gut, you can start to see a little bit of loose stool. Sometimes that can be from irritation, and that real stimmy hay can get a little scratchy.
Yeah.
So in those cases, it's obviously always case by case, but for my senior horses, I really like to, provide a senior feed, but then I usually do like an alfalfa pellet or something too, like a mash.
Add with the.
Yep, easiest to chew, help it be easier to digest. So like anything you can soak, it doesn't necessarily have to be a senior feed, but if you're soaking it, but your senior feeds are generally going to be the forage based. So when we're talking about concentrates, we're talking about the grains. So the grain versus forage is the concentrate versus forage. That's a little bit of the difference. So senior feed with concentrates also would generally mean the forage based with grains involved as well.
Okay. There's so much more to learn, right? Every question gives me 10 more questions.
Oh yeah.
All
I
right.
think that's just horses
in general. Yeah.
It's the way it is. All right, I know we've kept you longer. I want to say thank you to everybody. A couple quick final notes before we thank these girls for presenting for us. The Hay Matters video is on what, Dan? How do they find that?
It's on our website on Horse TV.
Okay.
It will look like this.
He'll get there eventually.
Yep, run faster.
Run.
Run, horse, run.
So you can go back to this anytime and watch it. I think isn't it about 90 minutes or is it just an hour?
It's about 90 minutes. It was a good long discussion.
Okay.
You guys were here for it. It was a very good discussion.